Hello and welcome to the LLG Grapevine podcast. You are listening to Helen Bennett, LLG's Executive Director of Policy and Governance, and Dennis Hall, LLG Bulletin Editor.
Hello, everyone.
Now, in a statement last week, I just want to highlight that Minister Jim McMahon announced that 4 inaugural mayoral elections will take place in Greater Essex, Hampshire and Solent, Norfolk and Suffolk, and Sussex and Brighton. And he also announced that following a request from the local authority leaders in Cumbria and Cheshire and Warrington, the government have agreed to align inaugural mayoral elections with the vast majority of local elections in May 2027. The government's done this, it says, to simplify the elections for voters and save taxpayers money. Now, on voting, mayoral elections held in 2026 will take place under the first past the post voting system. That's the current law. And the recently tabled English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill will move future mayoral elections and police and crime commissioner elections to the supplementary vote system, which was in place prior to 2023, subject to Parliament approval. This would be then relevant for the proposed 2027 mayoral elections onwards. So I thought that was important to highlight. But now, Dennis, let's look at something completely different. Let's talk about some alarming figures and school suspensions.
Yes, indeed, Helen. The number of school suspensions and exclusions in England has reached its highest level since 2006, Department for Education figures now show. There were 954,952 suspensions in state schools in the year to 2024, a 21% increase on the previous year, while exclusions also rose 16% to 10,885. While secondary school pupils comprised of most suspensions, more than 100,000 were primary age, a number that has grown significantly. A suspended pupil must stay out of school for a fixed period of up to 45 days per school year, while those excluded are permanently removed. Individual pupils often account for more than one period of suspension.
Well, I think during that time as well, they're not allowed out, are they?
No.
That's an offence as well.
Stuff.
The government says it's tackling the root causes of poor behaviour and claims it's intensively supporting 500 schools with the worst behaviour. There's a notable school in Wales that's featured in the BBC News about how to tackle behaviour. But persistent disruptive behaviour was the most common reason pupils were sent home, accounting for half of all suspensions and 39% of exclusions. And nearly half, and I don't think this is a surprise, of the suspensions were among pupils getting support for special education needs, who were 3 times more likely to be suspended than their classmates. And surely this has got to be because they're not in the right setting and getting that specialist school support. Yeah.
And interestingly, children on free school meals were also overrepresented, making up a quarter of the school population, but 60% of suspensions. Now, Paul Whiteman, General Secretary at School Leaders Union, the NAHT, said schools alone could not address the causes of poor behaviour. He said schools have a duty to provide a safe environment for all pupils and only use suspensions and exclusions when other options to ensure this have been exhausted. And he went on, the reasons for disruptive behaviour often lie beyond the school gates and have their roots in wider challenges, including everything from poverty to access to support with special educational needs and mental ill health.
Well, it was quite shocking that so many suspensions are occurring in primary school. But the vast majority, of course, 9 in 10, in fact, occurred in secondary schools. And this was interesting. Year 9 have the highest rate. That's the options year. Primary age suspensions rose, though, up 24% on the previous year. And the vast majority of pupils who were excluded at primary school were getting, as we've said, support for educational needs. And that was at 88% compared with 46% of excluded secondary school pupils. So more primary school children with special education needs are suspended or excluded than those in secondary school.
Yes, and responding to the figures, Early Education Minister Stephen Morgan said the Labour government had wasted no time in tackling the root causes of poor behaviour, including offering mental health support in every school and expanding free school meals. He pointed to its new attendance and behaviour hubs, which will directly support the 500 schools that need the most help. We're also continuing, he said, to listen to parents as we reform the SEND system, while already putting in place better and earlier support for speech and language needs, ADHD and autism.
Well, I think everybody agrees that the earlier the diagnosis, the better. That's for sure. So let's hope they're able to address that.
Yes.
Now let's take a look at the government's response to the consultation on the reforming the right to buy. Now, the government committed to better protect existing stock by reviewing the increased right to buy discounts introduced in 2012 and also increasing protections on newly built social rent housing.
Well, that's right. And the government acted quickly to deliver on this promise. In November 2024, it returned right to buy maximum cash discounts to pre-2012 levels to protect existing social housing stock, whilst ensuring long-term tenants still have a route to buy their own home.
Yes, and at the same time, the government increased the cost floor protection period from 15 to 30. And at autumn budget 24, the government confirmed that councils can retain 100% of their right to buy receipts, which it hopes will boost capacity to deliver new homes. That's big on their agenda, of course.
Yes, and the consultation which followed, which was entitled Reforming the Right to Buy, considered the further reform needed in order to achieve a fairer and more sustainable system, seeking views on changes to eligibility requirements, exemptions from sale, and how rules on the spending of right to buy receipts could be further simplified.
Well, in the response, the government has said it intends to bring forward legislation to implement some major reforms, but with the caveat when parliamentary time allows. And of course, we know that there is a ton of work going on.
Yes, indeed.
So when this happens, I don't know. But what they want to do is they want to increase the eligibility requirement currently at 3 years to 10 years. They want to prevent existing property owners, all those that have previously benefited from the scheme, from exercising the right to buy, unless there are exceptional circumstances. And here I think we're talking about victims of domestic abuse, for example. And they want to amend discount rules so that discounts start at 5% of the property value and increase by 1% for every year an individual's secure tenant, but cap that at 15% maximum. And then they want to exempt newly built social and affordable housing from the right to buy for, wait for it, 35 years, and update definitions for existing exemptions to remove outdated terms.
I also understand that the government will legislate to increase the repayment period from 5 years to 10 years and extend the period in which a local authority has the right of first refusal on resale so that it applies in perpetuity. Now, Helen, I want to discuss next something quite interesting as well. We've talked a lot about remote meetings in local authorities, but now I want to discuss remote proceedings, not for local authorities this time, but for the courts. Now, the government has given its wholehearted support to a private member's bill that gives judges the power to hold remote hearings for breaches of some injunctions. The two-clause Courts Remote Hearings Bill is sponsored by Oliver Ryan, who currently sits as an independent MP after being suspended by Labour earlier this year over his membership of a WhatsApp group which contained offensive messages. It seeks to amend the law so that two general categories of case can be heard remotely at the discretion of the judge. These are breaches of some injunctions and orders in the county and family courts, as well as persistent defaulters on orders to pay council tax. So this is of interest to us in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Bill's committee stage was last week, I believe, and Oliver Ryan said at that, and these are his words, the ability to appear remotely is especially important because in many cases, defendants must be physically brought into the courts within 24 hours of their arrest for breach of these civil injunctions. And sometimes this is not possible. Defendants may be arrested out of hours and court facilities may be some distance away, all whilst the clock, as set out in the current legislation, is running down. And he argues that the bill enhances public safety, ensuring that dangerous individuals, in the case of breaches of injunctions, and we're talking such as gang injunctions, are not released for want of finding a court or judiciary out of hours.
And Justice Minister Sarah Sackman said she gave the bill her wholehearted support. She reassured MPs that the number of hearings in either type of case was not expected to rise. And she said these changes will give magistrates and judges in county and family courts greater flexibility and efficiency. The changes will also mean that potentially violent individuals, such as those arrested for breaches of injunctions to protect victims of domestic abuse, can be dealt with quickly and efficiently. And she described the bill as modest but perhaps mighty, adding it adds to the flexibility of the ways that the courts operate without compromising any of the safeguards of our justice system. And it has, as she said earlier, our wholehearted backing.
Well, certainly there does need to be action to tackle the backlog, but it seems we will have to wait for parliamentary time. It seems a good initiative, though, I think, actually.
Yes. I
So
like
I
to
hope,
think it follows on from the example in our sector of the success in the campaign that LLG has had in particular in bringing in remote council meetings.
yeah, yeah, well, absolutely. Now let's move on to something slightly historic, something I've always rather enjoyed reading about in a kind of weird way. Um, this is chancel repair liability. So if you've ever bought a house, it might have been the first time you came across the concept of chancel repair liability. I would say lots of members of the public are completely unaware, even if they have, whereas conveyors will be more than aware, of course.
Well, yes, I can only remember it from my landlord days back at university, and that was a long time ago. But it is a live issue, and the Law Commission have published proposals which would clarify that chancel repair liability, which is a historical and little-known obligation to pay for repairs to part of a parish church, that it only affects property buyers if it's registered against the property title. All seems reasonable to me.
Well, it does because it can come as a shock. For decades, home buyers have faced additional costs for searches and insurance. Mostly people get indemnity insurance against potential chancel
Hmm.
repair liability. And I know that this is only 30 to £40 per transaction. But what the Commission is saying is that whilst that might seem modest, cumulatively, this adds up to millions of pounds to property transactions across England and Wales each year. And the reforms would amend the Land Registration Act 2002 to confirm what I understand is widely understood to be the case since October 2013, that purchasers of registered land are only bound by chancel repair liability if it appears on the property title.
Yes, and Sir Peter Fraser, chair of the Law Commission, stated that these proposals aim to deliver the certainty that was intended when the land registration rules changed in 2013, as you mentioned. By clarifying the law, he says the aim is to reduce unnecessary costs for those who buy land, such as home buyers, while ensuring the rules work as Parliament originally expected.
Well, Dennis, there's a really high profile case I came across in respect of chancel repair liability. And that's the case of Mr. and Mrs. Wallbank. And they were pursued for nearly £187,000 in chancel repair liability. Could you imagine it coming out of nowhere?
Yeah.
Plus 250,000 in legal costs. And their case really highlights the potential impact of liability on modern homeowners. The consultation also examines the scope of chancel repair liability in Wales, which I read has significantly been reduced by the Welsh Church Act 1914, but still is an issue. And the Law Commission is inviting views from anyone affected. They've got an open consultation running. They've given lots of time, which is pleasing to see. You've got until the 15th of November if you want to respond to that.
Sounds as if they're trying to put right an anachronism that really should have been dealt with years ago. So good luck with that, I think. But now let's return to the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill, which we will be covering in more detail in our accompanying vlog. But I wanted to flag up here in the podcast those provisions in the bill covering the new concept of neighbourhood governance. Now, these seem to have been outshone by other aspects of the bill on devolution and LGR.
Well, I think that's right, Dennis. The bill reveals new plans to introduce neighbourhood governance structures that will require councils. So there's going to be an obligation on councils here to establish effective neighbourhood governance.
Now, an explainer document published alongside the bill on Thursday, the 10th of July, said The bill will support the government's ambition to rebalance power away from central government so that leaders can take back control and increase prosperity for local people by creating a default framework available in law, which includes new powers to enhance the offer for devolved areas across England. On neighbourhood governance, the explainer said the goal of the new approach is to move decision-making closer to residents, so decisions are made by people who understand local needs. And it added, additionally, developing neighbourhood-based approaches will provide opportunities to organise public services to meet local needs better.
Well, yeah, and details of the obligations on councils, the government have said, will be set out in regulations, which will be made after the bill is in force. So that's going to come slightly down the line. It said, when I say it, sorry, the government said it will carry out a review on the best way to achieve its aims, including speaking to this sector, which I think they have to ensure they have the opportunity to contribute and share existing good practice.
Yes, and it noted that councils can still set up town and parish councils, of course, and it will issue guidance on how neighbourhood governance structures can work well with town and parish councils. We want to make sure, they say, that all local authorities have a way of working with people in their neighbourhoods, so they're not relying just on town and parish councils to do it. So this is an interesting aspect, Helen. We'll have to keep an eye out on this and see what comes out further along the line.
Yeah, that's the first indication, because the government haven't said, well, I'm not aware, that they've said certainly publicly that councils will still be able to set up town and parish councils. So it'll be interesting to see those areas that don't have anything in place at the moment, whether they'll seek to do that, I don't know. Let's hope we don't go down charter trustee routes either. Well, some people might really wish to have them, actually, so I probably shouldn't say that. But if anyone doesn't know what a charter trustee is, look it up. It's fascinating. Very, very English thing, I think, I'll have to say. Now, let's turn to an article directly taken from the local government lawyer. So this is the Grenfell, this impacts the Grenfell Tower inquiry. So the government has announced a pause to debarment investigations into 7 organisations criticised by the Grenfell Tower inquiry in order to prevent any impact on separate criminal investigations. Now, you may or may not remember that the Metropolitan Police launched a criminal investigation following the tragedy, and that was back in June 2017. So we're quite a far way on.
Yes.
But there was, if you look at the scope of it, there was a dedicated team of 180 officers and staff working to identify any offences and those responsible. And now the Metropolitan Police and Crown Prosecution Service have informed the Cabinet Office that continuing the debarment investigations could unintentionally prejudice the criminal investigation and any future criminal proceedings.
And to ensure that the Metropolitan Police's criminal investigation and any future proceedings remain the priority, the Cabinet Office has paused its separate non-criminal debarment investigations at the request of the CPS and the Metropolitan Police. Now, this decision, the government said, has been made to safeguard the integrity of the Met's criminal investigation. And the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden, told Parliament of the need to maintain that integrity in relation to those proceedings in the pursuit of justice for the Grenfell community. Deputy Prime Minister is writing to the bereaved, to survivors and residents in the immediate community in order to share this decision and to reaffirm the government's commitment to holding organisations to account.
Well, investigations into the 7 organisations under new powers of the Procurement Act were announced immediately after the Act came into force. That would have been in February. The Act allows the government to investigate suppliers and, if certain grounds are met, add them to a published debarment list. Public sector organisations covered by the Act then must have regard to the list when carrying out new procurements covered under the remit, and can rely on this list to exclude a supplier where appropriate. So perhaps it might not be only this inquiry that brings additional companies onto that list. Dennis, we'll have to wait and see. On that note, that's it for another edition of the podcast. You can read more on the items discussed today and many more besides by going to bulletin number 27, available on the LLG website now. And Dennis and I are taking a summer break and we'll be back early in September. But not together, are we, Dennis? We're not going to.
No.
So until then, it's goodbye from me.
And from me too. Goodbye now.